Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something quite interesting, a subtle but really significant trend involving Japanese expatriates across the Asia Pacific.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's this quiet shift happening.
that's right.
We're digging into the source material, mainly an analysis called shifting sands, to understand why this group, which used to be a sort of steady stream indicating Japanese business presence, seems to be, well, shrinking and changing. Our goal here is to unpack the reasons, the strategy, the economics, the personal factors, and figure out what it all means for global work.
And it's crucial we do because this isn't just a minor dip. It's complex. You've got corporate strategies changing, big economic pressures globally, and actually quite fundamental shifts in personal priorities back in Japan itself. That old idea that Japanese expat numbers would just keep growing alongside Asian economies, that narrative's pretty much done.
Okay, let's dive right into the corporate angle then. The source flags a really noticeable drop in Japanese expats, especially in Southeast Asia. Thailand is mentioned as a key example, right? This used to be a major hub. So what's driving this pullback specifically? What are companies doing differently?
The main thing is localization. That's the big strategic shift. Companies are actively reducing long-term expat roles, and they're hiring local talent instead for important positions too, like management and sales. And it's not just about saving money, though that's part of it, obviously. It's framed as a strategic move towards being more effective locally.
How so? More effective.
Well, think about it. Historically, you'd send an expert from Tokyo, highly trained, yes, but they came with a hefty price tag, housing, international schools for kids, living allowances, all that. The analysis suggests that maybe the upfront cost of training local talent is starting to look much better compared to the ongoing expense of these big expat packages year after year.
Right, so it's moving beyond just cost cutting. It's about getting that deeper market understanding. Is that the idea?
Exactly. An expat from HQ knows the company inside out, sure, but do they immediately get the local consumer vibe?
Ugh.
Or navigate the local regulations as smoothly? Often, no. A local expert brings that instant connection. So yeah, the underlying message seems to be trading some centralized control for better regional agility and responsiveness.
That feels like a pretty fundamental change in how these Japanese businesses are operating overseas, sacrificing that direct HQ pipeline for local savvy.
It really is. We're talking about a move towards perhaps more genuine regional autonomy. Relying on talent flown in from Tokyo can slow things down, lead to, cultural misses. So by putting local managers in charge, maybe even roles like regional CFO or plant manager that used to be reserved for expats, these firms are betting on faster adaptation, better market fit. It's structural.
Okay, so if companies are creating this push away from expat roles through localization, let's look at the pull from back home, because this isn't just an Asia thing, is it? The source mentions a wider trend, more Japanese nationals returning home globally, reversing that long-term growth that apparently peaked around 2019.
Zoom out and you see these global economic pressures adding to the mix. The pandemic was definitely a catalyst, a shock to the system. But the sources point to more persistent factors now. Rising living costs worldwide, general economic uncertainty. Even in huge traditional expat destinations like the US and China, Japanese professionals are heading back, and often it's for financial reasons.
That really hits home, doesn't it? Managing international living costs, finding decent long-term places to stay, it's a massive headache for anyone working abroad these days. But the source brings up something else, a really powerful personal factor, the increase in dual-income households back in Japan.
Yes, this is critical.
It completely changes the personal calculation for moving overseas, right? For years, the expat model often assumed, perhaps implicitly, a single main earner. The spouse might manage the family side abroad, but now, if your partner has a good established career in Japan, asking them to potentially derail that for your overseas assignment, well, that's a huge ask, financially and personally for the whole family. It just makes accepting that transfer so much harder.
Precisely. And that's where corporate strategy bumps right up against personal life. The traditional expat package, even a generous one, often can't fully compensate for the career disruption a spouse might face. So you have this convergence, companies pushing localization and individuals feeling this pull towards stability, towards that dual income life back home. It creates a really strong barrier.
Yeah, it raises a big question, doesn't it? Are global companies adapting? Are they offering things like career support for the spouse who moves? Or are they just accepting they might lose good people who aren't willing or able to make that move anymore?
The trend seems to suggest the latter, perhaps, that the cost savings and perceived benefits of localization are, for now, outweighing the need to keep certain senior people mobile if the family situation doesn't fit the old mold.
So when push comes to shove,
Localization often wins out, it seems. And the employee with the dual career family might be the one who has to make the tough choice.
but it's not all just decline and return, is it? The sources are careful to point out that while overall numbers might be down, the pattern is shifting. It's not a simple retreat.
That's the really interesting twist here. Yes, the big traditional centers, the US, China, are seeing fewer Japanese residents. But that decline hides a kind of redistribution. The map is changing.
Where are people going then, if not the usual spots?
We're seeing, apparently, noticeable growth in some, we'll call them non-traditional regions.
Hmm.
The source specifically mentions Africa, the Middle East, Central America, and Oceania. These aren't the places that typically define Japanese overseas presence in the, say, 90s or 2000s. Not the big manufacturing bases or financial hubs.
Okay, so let's think about what that implies for you listening. Why these areas? Why are they becoming more attractive as the big centers fade slightly? It must signal a strategic shift, right?
Certainly suggests that. Maybe a move away from managing established operations in saturated markets toward something else, like resource exploration, infrastructure projects, getting a foothold in new emerging markets.
So think about Japanese interests in Africa, maybe minerals or development projects, or Central America for new trade routes, perhaps.
Exactly. These assignments are likely different, maybe more specialized, project-focused, possibly shorter term. But they show where companies might be seeing future growth potential and maybe taking more risks. It points towards a very targeted deployment of talent, often into tougher environments, maybe lacking the established expat infrastructure and support systems.
Which leads perfectly to the next point. The challenge for those who do go, especially to these newer, less established places, if there are fewer expats overall and they're heading to more challenging spots, how do they build those vital support networks?
It's a huge challenge. And what's fascinating is how non-corporate activities become so important. The Thorsk is a great example. The annual Asian-Japanese Rugby Cup, the AJRC.
Rugby, interesting. How does that help?
Well, AJRC started way back in '97. It brings together Japanese teams from across Asia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok, elsewhere. Rugby itself, it's physical, demanding. It builds incredible teamwork and trust. That kind of camaraderie, built through shared effort and, frankly, sweat, can be incredibly important for people working under pressure far from home. It's deeper than just a business networking event. It creates real bonds, helps ease the adjustment, gives that sense of belonging.
That makes perfect sense. It highlights that even as corporate support might be changing or shrinking, these informal networks, sports teams, cultural groups, whatever, become the absolute lifeblood for morale and well-being.
They're crucial support mechanisms, filling gaps that the formal company structures might not cover anymore.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, what's the big picture? The sources seem to paint a picture of a deep, system-wide rethink of sending people overseas.
Yeah, it's like a three-way pressure on the old model. It's not just about let's expand.
Yeah.
It's a much more calculated decision now, weighing costs and benefits at the corporate, economic, and personal levels.
So let's recap the core reasons for you, just to make it crystal clear.
Yeah.
First, the big corporate strategy shift. Prioritize local talent over costly expats.
Right. Localization first.
Second, global economics. Rising costs, making staying abroad or moving abroad less financially appealing, driving people back home.
The cost of living pressure, definitely.
And third, the personal angle.
Yeah.
Changing life in Japan, especially dual-income families, making people more reluctant to uproot themselves for a transfer.
That personal resistance is key.
So what this deep dive really shows is that the future for Japanese professionals working abroad, especially for extended stays, looks different. It's being shaped more by localization, global economics, and family realities, not just unchecked corporate expansion.
Which leads to a final thought for you to chew on,
Yeah.
based on that changing map we discussed. If expats are decreasing in places like Thailand, associated with management and manufacturing, but increasing in regions like Africa or Oceania, what does that tell us about the kind of expat role that's emerging? Is the typical Japanese expat shifting away from being a long-term manager of an established operation and more towards being maybe a highly specialized short-term expert, a fixer perhaps, someone focused on specific projects like resource deals or setting up initial infrastructure in frontier markets?
That's a fascinating question. The destination changes. Maybe the job itself is fundamentally changing too. A really interesting point to consider. Well, thank you for joining us for the deep dive on these really important shifts affecting the global workforce. We hope you feel well informed.